Imagine two ships, powerful and indomitable, swallowed by a freezing silence and a mystery that has tortured generations. But the real horror, believe me, was not the disappearance, but what those frozen waters would hold for almost 2 centuries. Back in 1845, an ambitious dream sailed towards the North Pole, a journey that promised glory, but instead delivered only an endless nightmare. This is the story of the Franklin expedition, a tragic odyssey in which courage clashed with the inexorable fury of nature, leaving behind a veil of silence so thick that the truth remained hidden for nearly 170 years. Get ready to dig into the ice, because what we will find, I assure you, is more disturbing than any legend. Imagine a world of blinding white and deep blue, where the silence is broken only by the groaning of the ice and the whistling of the wind. It is 1845, and against this breathtaking but unforgiving backdrop, two jewels of the Royal Navy, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, prepared to brave the unknown. They were mighty ice-strengthened ships, equipped with the most modern technology of the time, including steam engines and a 3-year supply capacity. They were the spearhead of British exploration, symbols of an age of unstoppable progress and imperial ambition. Their goal? To find the fabled Northwest Passage, a sea route that promised to connect the Atlantic to the Pacific via the Arctic. A mercantile dream that would revolutionize world trade and establish Britain as the ruler of the seas. It was a bold, almost crazy undertaking, but the idea of shortening the journey to Asia was an irresistible temptation. Leading this titanic undertaking was Admiral Sir John Franklin, a man of great experience, a seasoned explorer, respected and loved by his men. Her reputation instilled confidence, and the crew, 128 strong among the bravest and most trained men in the Navy, was animated by hope, optimism, and a burning desire for glory. None of them, however, could have imagined that it would not be a journey of discovery and success, but a descent into an unimaginable tragedy. A mystery frozen in time for over a century, destined to become one of the darkest maritime enigmas in history. The ships and their men were swallowed up in the icy embrace of the Arctic, turning a mercantile dream into an unprecedented tragedy. The ships, solid and well equipped, were the pride of the Royal Navy. They set sail amidst applause and celebrations, but then nothingness. A veil of thick fog, thick as a shroud, and a deafening silence fell upon them. The last time they were sighted by a whaling vessel was in late July 1845, off Greenland. From that moment on, the Erebus and Terror vanished. For years, for decades, there was no further news. Imagine the anguish back home, the vain waiting, the hope that was gradually fading as time devoured every possibility of salvation. Every returning ship, every arriving letter was awaited with bated breath. But the Franklin expedition had vanished into thin air, an enigma that weighed like a millstone on the collective conscience. Large-scale, costly, desperate search expeditions were launched, the largest ever organized up to that time. Ship after ship plied those icy waters, land parties ventured into desolate lands, hoping for a signal, a wreck, any clue. Franklin's wife, Lady Jane, never gave up, financing multiple missions on her own, driven by unwavering love and hope. But the Arctic, with its monumental indifference, held its secret tightly. The result was always the same: no significant findings, just a few vague signs, some camp ruins, but never anything that could explain what had really happened. This lack of answers only fueled legends, wild speculation, whispers of ghost islands, giant whales, and Arctic curses. Public opinion oscillated between the heroism of the fight against the elements and the possibility of an ignoble end. But the truth, as often happens, was much more prosaic and infinitely more terrifying than any fantasy. For nearly 170 years, the two ships and their hapless crews remained imprisoned, ghosts underwater, guardians of a truth too bitter to be believed. They had become legends, warnings, stories to be told around the fire. Then finally the silence was broken, not by a miracle, but by the tenacity of modern research, which, with new technologies and incredible perseverance, has once again challenged the Arctic. In 2014, after decades of effort and thanks to a Canadian search campaign, one of the two ships, HMS Erebus, was finally located, lying on the seabed, almost intact. As if time had stopped for her, it was a historic moment, a discovery that rekindled the hope of finally understanding the horror of that expedition. The excitement was palpable around the world. 2 years later, in 2016, shortly after the first, the other HMS Terror emerged from the darkness. The wrecks lay there under miles of sea ice, protected and preserved from the extreme cold, like perfectly sealed time capsules. The decks, the masts, the interior accommodations, everything was surprisingly well preserved, almost a still image of a moment of life abruptly interrupted. They were there to tell a story, to reveal the chilling details of their end, to tear away the veil of mystery that had shrouded them for centuries. The underwater discoveries and subsequent analyses of the human remains and recovered objects have torn away the veil of mystery, revealing a truth darker and more macabre than anyone could have imagined. It wasn't just the cold that killed those men, it wasn't just inexperience or bad luck. It was an insidious and invisible enemy. The first devastating revelation: widespread lead poisoning. Analysis of the remains of many sailors, including some found on King William Island as early as the 19th century, has shown extremely high levels of this toxic metal in the tissues of the unfortunate sailors. The source? Canned food, an innovation that was supposed to be their salvation. They had been sealed with crude solder and low quality lead. Every meal, every bite of food was a slow, inexorable dose of poison. Imagine what that meant. Lead not only weakened the body, causing weakness, anemia, and severe pain, but it also attacked the mind mercilessly. It caused insanity, extreme irritability, mental confusion, paranoia, hallucinations, and deep depression. In those desperate conditions, trapped in the ice with food supplies dwindling and bodies giving way, the poison transformed brave and disciplined men into delirious shadows, prey to bottomless despair. Their lead-clouded minds left them incapable of making rational decisions, further worsening their already precarious situation. But the worst was yet to be revealed. When, over the years, the first human remains were found, they were not complete skeletons, but fragments scattered on a desolate island. And on these bones, modern science has made the most chilling discovery of all: knife marks and precise incisions. Detailed forensic analysis revealed that the cuts were not signs of animal attacks, nor of hasty burials. They were traces left by human hands: clean cuts to remove flesh, chips to access the marrow, even marks suggesting boiling processes. The conclusion was inevitable, a whisper of horror spreading among the experts: cannibalism. Those men, driven mad by lead, unbearable hunger, and the blackest desperation, had succumbed to the most taboo act: devouring their own comrades in an attempt to survive in an icy hell. An inhuman fight for survival which shows the darkest and most fragile side of the human soul when pushed to the extreme limit, transforming brave sailors into ghosts fighting against their own humanity. The Franklin expedition is not just a page of history, but a silent warning, a chilling reminder of the implacable force of nature and the intrinsic fragility of man in the face of it. It is a tale of how technology and human pride can be bent and destroyed by the most extreme conditions and invisible mistakes. The mystery that has shrouded those ships for so long has been torn apart, but the sinister echoes of what happened, the slow poisoning, the madness that corroded minds, cannibalism as a last desperate resort, continue to haunt, echoing through the corridors of time. It's a story that makes us reflect on the cost of exploration, the fine line between ambition and tragedy, and what we're willing to do when all hope fades. The ice, a silent and impassive witness, has finally revealed its truth. A story not just of glorious heroes, but of ordinary men pushed to their limits, a tragedy of courage, desperation, and the most merciless of truths. It is one of exploration's greatest and darkest tragedies, a tale that reminds us of how fine the line between civilization and survival is, especially when the Arctic grips you in its icy grip and all certainties are swept away.